Hey everyone, and welcome to SkillCapped. In this guide, we'll be going over the best agent picks for every single map in Valorant, but with a twist. You see, recently we had the biggest tournament in Valorant's history, First Strike. Now this tournament ran for every single major region, with months of games leading up to the playoffs, which then resulted in the definitive top teams of each region facing each other. This gave us unique insights into the Valorant meta that we simply have never had before, and it's these statistics from these tournament games that will form the basis of this tier list. What we've done is taken the stats from what the experts consider the three top regions from this tournament: North America, Europe, and Korea. We then took all of the games from the playoffs, meaning only the games played by the top teams from each region. We then compiled the pick rates of agents for each map. What this does is give us an objective look at what the best teams in the world consider to be the strongest agents for every single map, and trust me, there are a few picks you will be surprised by, so make sure to watch until the end. And remember, what you find here on our YouTube channel is just a taste of the hyper improvement system on our website, SkillCapped.com. It's there, you'll not only find over 700 premium Valorant guides, but we also have up-to-date lineups for your favorite agents, detailed map breakdowns of the best strategies and spots to play, and an expanding library of live Smurf commentaries by some of the top Valorant players breaking down how you too can climb out of every rank in Valorant, ranging from Iron to Diamond. All of this can be unlocked with no risk with our rank improvement guarantee, so click the link in the description below, head to skillcapped.com, and get the rank you've always wanted. Alright, so jumping into the best agent picks for every single map, we'll be starting with the map Ascent. And one of the top picks for this map, coming in with a 100% pick rate across all three major pro regions, is Omen. Every team composition needs some form of smokes, and on the map Ascent, there simply isn't a better agent to fill that role besides Omen right now. He has several things going for him. First of all, mid control on Ascent is very important, and that means always smoking out key choke points every single round, whether you're attack or defense. And since Omen gets a smoke every 35 seconds, it can let him smoke out mid at the start of the round and still be able to execute on a site later on with smokes available. At the same time, his blind ability, Paranoia, has insane value on both bomb sites due to the nature of them, allowing him to essentially blind half the site. The second must pick for Ascent, also coming in with a 100% pick rate, is Sova. Ascent was basically made for Sova due to nearly all of the walls being paper thin and wall bangable. This will give you insane value out of your Recon Bolt and Owl Drone, since if someone is spotted, they can often just be sprayed down through a wall without counterplay. Additionally, the structure of Ascent's bomb sites give insane value to his Recon Bolt overall, allowing him to almost clear the entire site with proper placement, while also giving him a ton of useful post-plant lineups with his shock darts. Ascent is by far Sova's strongest map for pretty much every reason you could think of. Next, we have the third strongest pick for Ascent, and that is Jett. Ascent has some of the longest sightlines in the game, especially around the middle of the map, which is arguably the most important area to control. Jett, being the best agent with the Operator due to her dash ability, can end up completely taking over the game on defense with the Operator by controlling mid and then fast rotating from mid to other sites if needed. If you don't believe me, just watch any of TSM Wardell's games from the tournament on Ascent and you'll become a believer. At the same time, she pairs extremely well with the next agent, spoiler alert, Breach. The Jett Breach combo is extremely effective and is one of the most popular compositions being used by the pros. With this combo, you use Breach Flash, Jett dashes in off the flash, and then kills any defenders who are blind. This means on Ascent, Jett is fantastic by herself on the defense side using the Operator controlling mid, but then becomes one of the strongest entry fraggers on attack when paired with Breach. Now, if you look at the current team composition based on these picks, we have Omen as our smoke agent, Sova fills a unique utility and intel gathering role, and Jett as our duelist. This leaves two roles completely unfulfilled, a flash agent for entry fragging and a sentinel agent for helping bolster our defensive side. For the flash agent, Breach comes in as the most popular pick on Ascent by pro teams. One thing that's very unique though is that he has a 50% pick rate on Ascent between Europe and Korea, but has a 0% pick rate in North America. This trend of Europe and Korea following a similar pro meta and North America doing their own thing is something you'll find throughout this guide. When it comes to a flash agent on Ascent, North America picks Phoenix 68% of the time and Reyna 50% of the time, and this is very defining of North America's style of playing heavy duelist compositions that have a lot of solo strength and don't need to coordinate as much with teammates. And finally, the fifth pick for Ascent to fill out the Sentinel position is Killjoy, coming in as the top Sentinel pick with a 49% win rate. The second major alternative is Cypher, who had a 32% pick rate. Makes a lot of sense that Killjoy would be the top Sentinel, as Ascent is basically her strongest map in the map pool right now. This is due to the structure of it. On attack, her ultimate essentially covers the entirety of both sites from very safe positions. And on defense, her setups are much stronger than Cypher's due to Cypher really not having the best spots to place his tripwires relative to other maps. So the top 5 agent picks on Ascent right now in order are Omen, Sova, Jett, Breach, and Killjoy. Next up, we have the map Split, which I know a lot of you guys are excited for as it's one of the maps players struggle with the most. Surprise, surprise, coming in as the top pick is once again Omen with a 100% pick rate across all major pro regions. Omen clearly overshadows all of the other controllers right now as the default smoke pick, and that has a lot to do with his paranoia just being so insanely powerful. For example, on B side on Split with Paranoia, you can clear out all of the right side's most common spots played before you move in. On A side, his Paranoia will pretty much clear all of back of sight. It gives him tremendous value and versatility in a team composition filling both the smoker and flasher role. The second most powerful pick on Split may be a surprise to some of you, but it's actually Raze, coming in at a 83% pick rate. This is for a lot of different reasons. One, Split is a very claustrophobic map, which gives Raze's AoE abilities like her grenades a ton of value. She also has a lot of good satchel boost locations that give her height advantage into fantastic ults. On top of that, her boombot can bring a ton of value due to Split having tight corridors, but not a lot of 50-50 angles, so sending your boombot through often just clears out that entire path. Not to mention that, again, spoiler alert, Cypher is by far the most popular Sentinel pick for this map, and Raze can function as a direct counter to him with her boombot activating tripwires, and her AoE abilities like her satchels being able to destroy tripwires. Next, coming in third place on Split is Breach with an insanely high 81% pick rate across all major pro regions. This actually has to do with the exact same reason Omen is so powerful, as his fault line ability is aimed in a similar fashion to Omen's Paranoia. Due to the layout of Split, you end up having an insane amount of super valuable fault line lineups. And by the way, those fault line lineups double as lineups for his ultimate as well. Split right now is by far Breach's most powerful map just due to the nature of the layout. Moving on, in fourth place, we have Jett with a 68% pick rate. It's obvious why Jett is coming in a bit lower on Split than the previous Ascent, given that there aren't as many open long-range sightlines to use the operator on in comparison. That being said, there still is a lot of value to be gained with her, being able to use the operator from the vent side of mid to take mid control, a very important concept on Split. Mid also has extremely fast rotates to the A and B sites, where you get long-range angles overlooking enemies trying to push into the site. What this can allow Jett to do is control mid with the operator on defense at the start of the round, and then rotate into helping hold pushes on the other sites. Again, we also have to mention with Cypher being a popular pick on Split, Jett will help counter that with her dash ability since it destroys them. Additionally, with Breach being a staple pick on Split, you also get access to the Breach and Jett combo we touched on earlier. Speaking of Cypher though, the fifth most popular pick on Split, filling the Sentinel slot, is Cypher with a 57% pick rate. The second most popular Sentinel being a bit surprising is Sage with a 38% pick rate, and Killjoy only having a 21% pick rate. It's obvious at this point why Cypher is the go-to Sentinel on Split. It's by far his strongest map, given the insanely powerful setups he has across the map. The most famous being his B-side setup, which can be extremely hard to deal with. It's also worth noting that Split is the only map that Sova isn't picked on with a 0% pick rate, so if you're a Sova main, you may want to consider picking up a second agent for when you end up on the map Split. This results in the top 5 picks on Split being Omen, Raze, Breach, Jett, and Cypher. Moving on, the next map we have to cover is Bind, and it's the first break in the pattern of Omen, Breach, Jett compositions. In first place, we still have Omen with a 82% pick rate, of course, as he's just that powerful, but we're seeing a variety of top teams trying out other controllers with success. Europe is leading the world in this meta shift, picking Brimstone instead of Omen in 29% of their games. The idea here is that often site executes need to be done very fast on Bind, and Brimstone can help do that by placing all 3 smokes down instantly. At the same time, Bind has the best layout for Brimstone's ultimate, giving him free kills on opponents playing in U-Haul and Lamps on A site, or Elbow on B site. Overall, if you're a Brimstone player, I'd reserve him for Bind only, as it's by far his best and really only viable map right now. The other alternative controller pick coming out of Europe is Viper, picked 36% of the time. This is heavily influenced by her one-way smoke on short A, giving her a tremendous amount of control over that important area. At the same time, Bind has some of the least amount of verticality compared to other maps, resulting in her wall having a lot of value since it often just blocks off entire sections of the map. Moving on to the second most popular pick, which is Sova, with a 78% pick rate. From this point forward, you'll see Sova being a staple pick for every single map, and it's mainly due to the fact that he's one of the most unique agents that simply fills a role no one else can right now with his intel gathering. His Recon Bolt paired with his Owl Drone basically allows you to clear entire paths and bomb sites on attack, allowing you to spot out defenders before they even know where you are. At the same time, on defense, he has fantastic Recon Bolt placements at the start of the round that can pretty much tell you which site the enemy is going for. So just as an example, like you could recon bolt short A at the start of the round, then owl drone into the teleporter to check for a hookah push, basically giving you intel across half of the entire map before the attackers even had time to set up. The third most popular pick on Bind is a Sentinel, Cypher, with the insanely high 71% pick rate. And we saw him used with great success in the First Strike tournament. For example, Jack from the Pro Team Summon FC nearly won his team the entire tournament with his B-side holds as Cypher against Team Heretics. Basically, Cypher has a wide variety of B-side setups that all have a ton of strengths, meaning that he can constantly switch up these setups between rounds, making it very hard for the attackers to push into B-side without getting caught by them. Also, it needs to be mentioned that the teleporters on Bind aren't just a useless gimmick. They give Bind a heavy rotational playstyle on attack, and this requires you to keep a dedicated lurker to watch for pushes by the defense while you execute these rotates. In general, Bind is one of the maps where the defense pushes aggressively the most on, and so on attack he can use his tripwires and camera to lurk very effectively and shut down these defensive pushes and deny intel from the defenders. The final two picks on Bind are actually duelists, Jet with a 70% pick rate and Raze with a 69% pick rate. And this naturally may be a surprise, as it means the most popular team composition is Omen, Sova, Cypher, Jet, and Raze, which means you have no dedicated flash agent. Keep in mind that teams even replace out Omen for a different controller that has no flash. And these popular flashless team compositions on Bind actually make a lot of sense due to how the bomb sites are designed. If you go into a custom game yourself, you'll see what I mean. All of the entrances into sites, which is where you normally flash from, don't have good coverage with a ton of angles not being cleared by the flash. At the same time, there are a lot of small areas with cover that defenders play from that prevent traditional flashes from being effective. When you have these kind of open sites but with strange geometry with small bits of cover littered throughout, flashes simply don't get a lot of value. What this means is that in your own solo queue games, if you're on Bind and have no flash agent on your team, don't worry, as it's one of the only maps where running a heavy duelist composition is perfectly fine. With that being said though, Bind was also the map where we saw the new agent Skye being picked on the most with an 18% pick rate. Now, this may seem a bit strange at first given what we just said about flash agents, but it makes a ton of sense due to how Skye's flashes work. You want to angle her bird up high in the air, often over the top of walls, and despite the bomb sites on Bind having a lot of small bits of cover, they lack any kind of verticality. This means that Skye's flashes being so high up in the air can often blind enemies despite them hiding behind cover, which is the main problem the other flash agents struggle with. So the top picks on Bind right now are Omen as the controller, Brimstone and Viper as alternative picks, Sova, then Cypher as the Sentinel, and running two duelists with Jet and Raze. Moving on, our next map is Haven. Here we actually see pro teams approaching the map with the exact same team compositions as Ascent. Once again, Omen takes first place with a 100% pick rate. Now, despite Omen being basically a must pick on every map, Haven is still arguably one of his strongest. This is because Haven can be a very difficult map to play, having 3 bomb sites, resulting in a lot of rotations on the attack side. This means you are often smoking out one area of the map at the start of the round, only to rotate off and having to smoke a different site later on, and with Omen's smokes regenerating, he's the only agent who can really do this. There's also a ton of verticality on Haven, which gives him a tremendous amount of value from his teleport ability. The map is also structured in such a way that he has a lot of strong ult locations that can't be cleared efficiently by the defense. Sova is also a must pick on Haven with a 100% pick rate. Again, this becomes easy to understand once you get some basic analysis. Haven has 3 bomb sites, meaning the defense will be spread very thin. As Sova, you can use your recon bolt at the start of the round to gather intel, and then rotate defenders to stack towards whatever side of the map is most likely to be hit based on that intel. There's also a lot of weird kind of 50-50 angles on Haven, more than most players realize, and so his owl drone gets a ton of value being able to clear them out. In third place, we have Jet with a 72% pick rate on Haven. Haven is a bit weird. Despite there being a ton of different pathways into sites, which you would think would make an operator kind of weak, the areas of the map that do have long sightlines end up being some of the most powerful areas to control. For example, on defense, you can just put an operator on C site by themselves, and not only get complete control of C long, but that also gives you a lot of intel which can let you rotate off. It's the exact same idea on the other side of the map at A long, where you can control that long sightline with an operator. This means once you make contact, you've spotted the enemy early enough for your team to have enough time to rotate and help with the defense. On top of all of this, Haven has some of the most verticality in the game, giving Jet a ton of valuable off angles on top of different boxes and containers. So this leaves 2 spots remaining, a Flash Agent and a Sentinel. Breach is the most consistent pick for the Flash Agent, coming in at a 53% pick rate. However, as mentioned previously in this video, the North American region favors a more duelist-centered playstyle, and so Phoenix is by far the most popular pick there at an 83% pick rate. Well, what does all this mean for us solo queue players? Well, if you're playing by yourself, probably want to go with Phoenix as your Flash Agent. However, if you're queuing up with teammates, you can opt into going for Breach instead and look to make use of that Breach Jet combo. That's very important to note as well. If you don't have a Jett, well then you shouldn't pick Breach. Instead, go with the more self-sufficient Phoenix. And lastly, we have the Sentinel slot, which is highly contested. Killjoy is picked 48% of the time and Cypher 43% of the time. Both are completely viable picks in their own right on Haven, and Haven is probably the most balanced map in terms of these Sentinels, with no Sentinel having a clear upper hand on the other. This means you can go with Cypher or Killjoy based on whichever you enjoy more. So the strongest picks on Haven right now are Omen as the controller, then Sova, Jett as the dedicated operator on defense and duelist on attack, with either Breach or Phoenix as the flasher, and Killjoy or Cypher as the sentinel. And finally, we are at the final map, Icebox. First Strike was the first major tournament to debut Icebox and gave us our first look into the Icebox meta, and it's shaping up to be completely unique. First of all, Jett is actually the most powerful pick on Icebox with a 92% pick rate. This makes a ton of sense given that Icebox has pretty much the most verticality of any map in Valorant, and so Jett's updraft ends up getting an insane amount of value throughout the game. Also, as strange as this may sound, Jett's ultimate is actually one of the strongest ultimates in the game, and has one of the most stable power curves across all the maps. Think of other agent ultimates like Breach, Brimstone, Killjoy. Their power changes significantly from map to map as they are impacted heavily by the map's layout. Jett's ultimate doesn't have that problem, just being straight powerful regardless of the map's design. Sage's ultimate would be another example of an ultimate having this stable power curve across all the maps. The second most popular pick on Icebox is Omen with a 67% pick rate, his lowest of any map, and that other 33% pick rate comes from Viper, who is becoming the staple alternative controller pick for Icebox. In fact, Viper has completely replaced Omen as the controller on Icebox in Europe, where she has a 100% pick rate. This is due to singular smokes having very low value on Icebox due to all of the different angles in the bomb sites. This is also why Viper is so popular, with her wall being able to cover entire sides of sites and block all of these angles at once with one ability. The third most popular pro pick is Sova with a 64% pick rate. This is actually quite a surprise, as Sova is pretty mediocre on Icebox due to the verticality and all of the different little cubbies and angles. It just results in his recon bolt rarely getting a lot of value or spotting enemies. This verticality also creates a problem with his ultimate being very hard to land consistently. However, his biggest strength and one of the main reasons pro teams pick Sova on Icebox is for his Owl drone. With Icebox having so many little hidden cubbies and 50-50 angles, you can just send in your Owl drone to clear these for you, making attacking far easier. Despite saying that, as teams become better on Icebox, we do expect Sova's pick rate to drop, as they will have to rely on his Owl drone a lot less. In fourth place, we have our Sentinel pickup, which is spread quite evenly. Killjoy has a 56% pick rate, Sage at 44%, and Cypher at 39%. First off, it has to be said, having at least one Sentinel is mandatory on Icebox. The bomb sites are extremely far away from each other, meaning that on defense you need a Sentinel to delay the push to help buy as much time as possible for the rotates. So Killjoy leads the pack with a 56% pick rate, and this is likely due to her ultimate having really good value on attack, being able to cover the entirety of the bomb sites. Additionally, Cypher is at the bottom with a 39% pick rate, likely due to his setups not being the greatest. You don't have a ton of super strong one-way smokes or hidden tripwires like on other maps. And Sage comes in with the surprising 44% pick rate due to her wall having insane value on both attack and defense. On defense, you can simply wall off tube to completely block it from attackers, which is a very valuable path of attack. And on the attack side, you have some nice wall offs to help make the default plans much safer. So this leaves us with one last spot. Now, typically we'd want to have a flash agent for this slot. And when teams do run a flash agent, Reyna is the most popular with a 36% pick rate. With Icebox often being so closed in, you can get a lot of isolated 1v1s, which is an environment that Reyna strives in. However, to be honest, with pro teams being relatively inexperienced with Icebox, Reyna can simply be a solid comfort pick, where you don't need to know specific lineups or the niche intricacies of how abilities interact with the map, and we think this map inexperience heavily influences Reyna's pick rate being so high. Now, alternatively to Reyna, we're just seeing teams run flashless team compositions instead of opting for the double duelist. In this case, they go with the 92% pick rate Jett paired with a 39% pick rate Raze. This follows the same logic as the flashless heavy duelist team compositions we covered on Bind. Due to the map design and layout of Icebox, your flashes often aren't clearing enough angles, and so you aren't getting a ton of value out of them. So a lot of teams just opt to run Raze instead of what would traditionally be a flash agent, just for that raw fragging power. Not to mention that Icebox's verticality and close corridors gives great satchel boost into ultimate combos for Raze. This leaves the top 5 agent picks for Icebox to be Omen as the controller, with Viper as a viable alternate, Jett being mandatory as the operator and duelist, Sova for his unique angle clearing and intel gathering, one Sentinel, either Killjoy, Sage, or Cypher, all 3 are viable, and either Reyna or Raze as the last pick depending on if you feel the need for a flash agent. Alright, now that we've gone over the top picks for each map, what kind of conclusions about the meta and agent strength can we draw from this? Well, firstly, clearly Omen is overpowered and we can expect a nerf very soon. He has the highest pick rate overall of any agent and is kind of causing a stale controller meta. He has a stranglehold on the role despite other picks such as Viper and Brimstone being considered powerful enough to be picked on certain maps at times. Basically, it's not that other controllers necessarily need buffs anymore. Omen at this point is just too powerful and needs a nerf. Sova is also looking like he could be a problem, being a mandatory pickup on every single map but split. With no other agent like him, that can also cause a kind of stale meta as you basically just have one unique agent who also has to take up a spot in the team composition every single time, which does restrict creativity and can be a bit repetitive. Jett is also proving to be a problem that may need to be addressed. Keep in mind, prior to the operator nerf several patches back, Jett was like god tier. Many thought that the operator nerfs would help to balance her without having to nerf her directly. However, that didn't really work out at all, as the operator nerfs basically just made it weaker on every single other agent but Jett, indirectly making her more powerful. Additionally, you have to keep in mind that a lot of the other powerful agents have received nerfs. Sage, Raze, Cypher. These three, along with Jett, used to be considered top tier until they got some heavy nerfs. This kind of left a power vacuum Jett has been happy to fill, and those nerfs made her indirectly more powerful as well. So I would not be surprised at all if we saw a small nerf to Jett at some point very soon. On the other hand, the Sentinel meta looks to be a lot more balanced than it ever was before. Keep in mind, for the longest time we had that double Sentinel meta where Sage and Cypher were mandatory pickups. At that point, Sage got a bunch of crazy nerfs and fell out of the meta, but then Cypher became god tier as a result. From there, then Cypher got nerfed, Killjoy received a few changes, now we're only seeing one Sentinel per team composition, with each Sentinel being viable pickups in their own right. So yeah, pretty good spot right now compared to where it used to be. And finally, let's talk about the Flash agents. Breach received some buffs a while back, and he's clearly become the go-to pickup for this role. This is definitely exasperated by Jett being such a powerful pick and the Breach Jett combo being so strong. However, Breach's strength right now by himself when not paired with Jett really isn't too crazy in comparison to other agents like Omen, Sova, or Jett. We're still seeing Phoenix and Reyna fill out the flashing role a decent amount of the time, so I could see him flying under the radar in terms of nerfs for a while other agents take a higher priority. And lastly, Skye was enabled for a good portion of the tournament and saw very little play, one of the least picked agents by pro teams. And we don't think this is due to not having enough time to practice with her, and instead, she's just simply not powerful enough right now to compete with other agents that fill a similar role. If you need a support flasher, then you're better off going with Breach, he's way stronger. If you need intel gathering, well then Sova is god tier and brings enough of that on his own. Considering the amount of games played across every single region, the fact that Skye was rarely ever picked is a very strong indicator to her being weak right now and in need of some sort of buff. However, that's much easier said than done, as what exactly do you buff in Skye's kit without immediately making her either overpowered or just super annoying to play against? I'm curious what you guys think, let us know in the comment section below. Alright, and remember, if you want to improve, win more gunfights, and get the rank you've always wanted, then check out our hyper improvement system at skillcapped.com, link in the description below. Also, while you're down there, leave a comment and let us know what agents you think need buffs or nerfs. And make sure to like the video, as it's the best way to show us you want to see more content just like this. We here at SkillCapped want to thank you for watching until the end, and we'll catch you in the next one.